Hello everyone, thanks for joining us. Before we begin, I just wanted to remind everyone that there is no call-in number, so you should be able to hear the program for today through your speakers on your computer. And if you're having any technical difficulties, the number on the screen is the one that you should call. So welcome to Why Buying Social is Good for Business. We're happy to have you all here today. And just before we dive in, I wanted to remind everyone that it's Bell Let's Talk Day, so we encourage you as we embark on an hour talking about issues related to mental health to tweet or retweet with the hashtag Bell Let's Talk. So my name is Krista Bennis, and I'm a program manager at the Mental Health Commission of Canada. And the work that I do here at the Commission largely focuses on eliminating barriers to employment for people with serious mental illness. We're thrilled to be joined by our presenters today who will introduce us to social procurement and why businesses should consider it as part of their purchasing strategies. Stephanie Pronk is from the Social Enterprise Institute, and she will share some information on tools, resources, and an online community available to businesses through the Social Enterprise Institute online learning platform. David Lepage of Buy Social Canada will take a closer look at what social procurement is, how to influence its growth in your sector, and how to implement it in your organizations. Don Palmer, Executive Director of Causeway Work Centre, will focus on how one social enterprise developed a relationship with the second largest social housing corporation in Ontario, moving from a pilot project to providing the trust required for the purchaser to develop a social procurement strategy. Before we hand the presentation over to them, I'd just like to take a few minutes to talk about some housekeeping items and then give you a brief overview of the Mental Health Commission of Canada and why we're interested in sharing this information. So as I said earlier, the audio is provided through your speakers on your computer. The webinar is being recorded, and so it will be available on our website in the coming weeks, and you'll be able to listen to it again. As well, the slides will be translated. We're going to have an opportunity for questions at the end of the webinar. However, in the interim, if anything comes up, there is a chat section of your computer screen that's in the center that everyone can use and access. So please feel free to enter your questions in there as you think of them, and we'll record them down and pose them back to the presenters at the end. So I'm just going to forward my slide. So the Mental Health Commission of Canada leads the development and dissemination of innovative programs and tools to support the mental health and wellness of Canadians. Through our unique mandate from the Government of Canada, the Mental Health Commission of Canada supports federal, provincial, and territorial governments as well as organizations in the implementation of sound public policy. We were created in 2007 by the federal government as an independent, arm's-length, non-profit organization with a 10-year mandate that included developing Canada's first ever mental health strategy. We addressed stigma and discrimination. We built a knowledge and exchange capacity in Canada, and through an expanded mandate to work on the housing and homelessness project for the At-Home Chez Soi project. Our funding has been renewed, and we have the current 2-year mandate builds on the work we have done in this area and now focuses on some work in suicide prevention, addictions and mental health, population-based mental health, engagement with Canadians, as well as provinces, territories, and federal partners. Now, within these priority areas, we have a number of initiatives that look at employment. Employment supports for people with mental illness, which I'll briefly introduce you to before I turn it over to our speakers. We know that many people living with mental health issues are qualified, skilled, and willing to work, but they face barriers in their attempts to find and be supported to maintain employment. These barriers exist despite the fact that we are seeing a positive trend in Canada over the last 10 years of increased representation of individuals living with mental health issues in the labor market, increasing awareness of mental health within the workplace, and growing evidence-based practices and policies that assist with their speedy reintegration into the workforce. However, there's more work that needs to be done to address these barriers. In 2013, the Mental Health Commission released a report called the Aspiring Workforce Report. And this report coined the term the aspiring workforce that describes those people who, due to mental illness, have been unable to enter the workforce, are in and out of the workforce due to episodic illness, or who wish to return after a lengthy period of being away. The intent of the project was to identify existing and innovative practices to increase opportunities that will help people living with serious mental illness to secure long-term, meaningful employment and income. The report puts forth a number of recommendations in some of the following key areas. Those include those for employers and job seekers to help employers see the business case, reduce stigma, and change attitudes and processes towards hiring, retention, and accommodation of individuals with mental illness. Now, we've recently completed a cost-benefit analysis for employers to look at the business case of hiring and recruiting individuals living with a serious mental illness. Now, that report will be available in the coming months, and we look forward to sharing that on our website. As well, the report recommended some disability and income policy reform. Some of these recommendations included eliminating disincentives for individuals to return to work, funding programs that provide integrated services for job seekers at the right pace and right time, with a focus on results of clients rather than numbers of clients served. The other area was around supported employment. Evidence-based supported employment is an approach to helping people find and keep jobs in their community. We are undertaking an environmental scan of supported employment programs that support people living with serious mental illness, and will be launching a supported employment community of practice to create an avenue for agencies to continue to exchange best practices and learn from new developments in the field. The other area that there was a number of recommendations that the report put forward was around social businesses and promoting the growth and development of social enterprises that hire individuals living with a mental illness. The Commission has invested in the Social Enterprise Ecosystem Project, which connects training, marketing, and impact measurement resources for social enterprises anywhere in Canada. A social business is a commercial venture that markets goods and services to the public and uses this economic activity to achieve social outcomes. The Commission is also partnering with the Social Enterprise Institute to deliver webinars like the one today, online and learning coaching support to social enterprises who hire people with mental illness. So with that, I will turn it over now to Stephanie Pronk to tell you a bit more about this work.
Thank you, Krista. That was a great introduction. So as Krista mentioned, I work for the Social Enterprise Institute, and it's an online learning platform designed specifically for social entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs working in organizations to start and grow their social enterprises, as Krista mentioned, which have the double purpose of creating an economic return to financially support their organizations, but also achieving the social mission as equal or more important than the financial return. Excuse me. So this was a product founded by Common Good Solutions over on the East Coast in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and it was founded from a real need from organizations like the organizations that are participants in the MHCC to help build and grow social enterprises. And many of the clients we served over the years needed easier access to social enterprise education and resources in order to start and grow social enterprise. So we decided to help level the playing field, to help provide this sort of education at a very low cost and sometimes free of charge, as you'll see, so that this education can be accessed right now all over the world by interested social entrepreneurs. So this is what our website looks like. You can reach it at https://socialenterpriseinstitute.ca. And on it there are over 65 courses on all topics related to social enterprise development. They're covered in 5 different areas: mission, marketing, money, management, and I'm missing one other: mission, money, manage, market, and measurement. Impact measurement is a big component as well. So you can find over 65 courses there, some of which are organized into neat bundles to help direct you to the topics you need, and in learning exactly what you need to learn in order to start and get active in working on your social enterprise. As Krista mentioned, this is a product that is part of the S4ES project. This is the Social Enterprise Ecosystem Project. Oh, someone else is clicking there. We'll just click that back. Sorry about that. And this is a partnership between 4 different partners across the country. So ourselves, Social Enterprise Institute, by Social Canada, sorry there, I think someone else is accidentally hitting a key. Commerce Solidaire, who's doing an online shopping platform, much like Amazon, for social ventures. Social Value Lab in the UK, who are helping with impact measurement, and they're the foremost international leaders on social impact measurement. So they're providing a great series of resources there. And CEDNET, the Canadian Community Economic Development Network. So you can find out more about the project that we're part of, that the Mental Health Commission of Canada is supporting, here at s4es.ca. There are also other ways you can participate as an organization. There is a Social Enterprise Grant Fund available. The impact measurement tools I mentioned by Social Value Lab will also be available. And there will be communities of practice where you can participate with other organizations and individuals looking to start a social enterprise to find support and access to resources to help you do so. So that's about it for the introduction. At the end of the webinar, we're going to give you a coupon code access through the Mental Health Commission of Canada to the Social Enterprise Institute. There's a series of courses you can access for free with their coupon codes, as well as coaching with experts from across the country in all areas of social enterprise development. So we'll be happy to share with you the code at the end of the session today. And if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to chat with me in the chat box or get in touch with us at our contact information that will be provided at the end of the session. Thanks. And next, Stephanie. I'll introduce David LePage.
Thanks, Stephanie. This is a great opportunity to bring this story together from all these perspectives. A little introduction about BiSocial. We are a social enterprise with partners across Canada, so structured as a partnership with Common Good Solutions, that Stephanie's shop, as well as Open Door Group, Accelerating Social Impact, a community contribution company, and Realize Strategies, a co-op of nonprofits. So we are a social enterprise whose purpose is to promote and advocate for social purchasing, also to provide certification for social enterprises. So we're a third-party certifying body for suppliers and purchasers who do social enterprise or social procurement. And we also do provide a lot of tools and resources and training in this area. So we're at bisocialcanada.com for more information. I'm just going to take a few minutes and walk through just the bigger concept of what is social procurement. So basically, the simplest way I think to understand social procurement is that what we're trying to do is leverage a social value from existing procurement. So when you think about purchasing anything, goods, services, construction, there's always some kind of ripple effect. Someone gets a job. There's an environmental impact. There's a social impact. So there's always some economic, environmental, and social impact when we purchase things. When we talk about social purchasing, we're talking about how do we intentionally create that ripple so that we're actually not just getting the least value, but we're getting the best value for money. So what we're talking about is this is not just a financial transaction, but procurement can actually be used as a tool, as a means. If we intentionally watch how institutions, government, and anchor institutions and organizations purchase, we can actually use our purchasing as a significant tool to build healthy communities. And when we think about healthy communities, the way I try to frame it is that it's not just economic capital, it's community capital. So most purchasing is done for economic capital. Either on the purchasing side, we say we spent the least amount of money, we saved money. On the on the supplier side, they say, this is great. I sold more product. I made more money. So most of the time, capital has been understood as economic capital. But in a healthy community, we also have physical capital, so things like environment and buildings. We have cultural capital, the respect and diversity of cultures. We do have economic capital. There's always financing and income. But we also have human capital, the skills, the learning opportunities. And the glue to all this, we also have social capital. So we really have to be aware of how we are intentionally using our purchases to create community capital. How are we impacting the health of our communities with our purchasing decisions? So when you think about what are some of the community benefits that could happen, think about things like education initiatives or buying from social enterprises that are going to create employment, as Don will talk about, or intentionally doing environmental initiatives, cultural, supporting workplace, supporting local economic activity. All of these things can be intentionally developed, intentionally created as a ripple effect when you think about how we're purchasing. Because basically what we've been doing is we purchase, we need something, and we buy it from a supplier, and the value that we're creating, if we don't think about intentionally looking at the impacts, we're basically creating supplier value. Yes, we get our product. Yes, we get it at a good price, but the bottom line is the value is created for the supplier. Social procurement is actually encouraging a shift that looks at achieving these multiple outcomes, not just financial value. So we're really looking at how do we shift this and call it not just procurement, but call it social procurement. Because if we take that same purchaser, they still are going to need, let's say, office supplies or couriers or printing or any number, landscaping, office cleaning, any number of things that we all buy. And we start to think, okay, I'm going to look at where I buy this and how I buy it. I am going to add a social value into my supply chain. So if we take those existing purchases, we add a social value into our supply chain. Instead of just creating supplier value, we're actually creating community value. And that's the objective of social procurement, is we're taking existing purchasing, adding in a social value, and then what we have, instead of just supplier value, we actually have community value. So think of it in terms of if we add, and traditionally, people bought things, I want what I need and I want the lowest price. And then in the 60s and 70s, we started to say, wait a minute, if we aren't careful, all we're doing is we're really creating all this environmental damage because we're only looking at the lowest price. And so we have to start looking at the environment. The emerging trend now in what we're talking about today, which is a significant shift, it's not just getting a good price, getting the right product and the best service possible, protecting or even encouraging environmental well-being, but also now we're thinking about how do we add a social component. So we're becoming much more intentional around using purchasing to create that community value. There's basically within this big bucket of social procurement two streams that we use. One of them, which is very common, is, whoops, lost the slide here. I can't move the slides right now. So if someone can move the slides back, that would be great. Great. Whoops. There we go. Thank you. So we think of two streams. One is the purchasing of goods and services, and the other one is in infrastructure. So oftentimes we're thinking about social purchasing, that's the goods and services. When we start to think about community benefits, we're basically talking about governments and developers doing big projects. And when big projects happen, there's lots of economic, social, and environmental impact. So what we're trying to do is take those projects and create community benefits. Think of Toronto, the Metrolinx area, or in Vancouver, a community benefit agreement for local employment from expansion of a casino. So that's what we're looking at. So when this trend in social procurement is really the idea that we're moving away from looking at purchasing only as a economic transaction, but we're actually looking at it as a community transformation tool. So when we think about this trend, we're going away from avoiding risk to actually creating opportunity. So I was just in a conversation yesterday with municipality, and they're like going, oh, but we have such a small staff and we work so hard, how do we add this? I said, well, if you think about it, the opportunities that can be created in terms of local job training, local opportunities for youth, all kinds of social impact, it will actually make your job easier in the long run because we're using what you're already doing to create greater value. So from risk to opportunity to a fulsome look at price, quality, but also from transaction to transformation. So that's sort of what would the trend, and I think the best way to understand that is I'm going to pass it over to Don, who can actually translate this kind of theoretical framework into something that actually is impacting people's lives. So Don?
Okay, sorry, Don, to interrupt. I wanted to apologize to the full group. We're not sure what's happening with the slides. I apologize to our speakers as well as the group to be able to follow the presentation. We're doing our best to try and figure out what's going on, and we'll get the slides hopefully back on track. Again, we promise these slides will all be uploaded after the event, and so we hope that you'll be able to follow along. Thanks, Don. Over to you.
Okay, yeah, it's important we get these working because otherwise I won't know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Causeway Work Center and how we moved from a pilot project to influencing an organization's social procurement policy. So Causeway, I can get the slides to move. Yeah, ooh, yeah, okay, a little slower. Yeah, okay, if we can go back. So, okay, so Causeway is a community economic development organization. We began in 1977 as a community mental health program with a mandate to provide pre-employment and employment programs for people with severe mental illness. Over the course of the years, we identified that there were a lot of needs that were in support of people's employment goals, and we developed a holistic approach to all our programming. So fast forward to 2018, and we have about 14 programs, of which we have, well, the slides are going crazy again, I see it, of which we have 4 social enterprises. We actually have 5. 4 of them are employment-related social enterprises. The 5th is a community finance fund, which is a partner between Causeway and 3 credit unions to provide an alternative to payday lending. And we developed that particular enterprise because we recognized that a number of folks that were employed in our 4 social enterprises were getting stuck in the payday lending situation. So we developed a loan fund with $100,000 worth of capital to try and get people out of the payday lending conundrum. So let me talk a little bit about our 4 social enterprises. We began our first social enterprise, which is Crackers Catering, a catering business, back in 1999. So Crackers is the oldest operating social enterprise in Ottawa. We began in 1999 with a revenue of about $5,000, and we're close to $500,000 with that particular business at this stage. We started our second social enterprise, which is the one I'll be talking more about through this presentation, which is Good-Natured Groundskeeping. We started that one in 2006. Our third social enterprise, which is a bike repair and refurbishing business, Cycle Salvation, we began in 2009. And our fourth social enterprise, Right Bike, which is a community bike share program, we began in 2011. So between the 4 employment-related social enterprises, we employ about 65 to 70 individuals every year, the vast majority of whom have a mental illness. And revenues for this fiscal year are expected to hit about $915,000. So all those revenues go into building the business and to employing more individuals. So it's purely employment related. So going back to Good-Natured Groundskeeping, when we first started that business, we started it as a program. So we had interest from the City of Ottawa to do a number of landscaping and snow removal tasks throughout the city, and we would hire people on a casual labor basis to do that. We realized fairly quickly that this could turn into a social enterprise if we could build up a clientele. So we started off initially by developing a relationship with a seniors association in Ottawa. So these would be seniors in their own homes who needed somebody to clean their walks, and we took that on and ran that for about 2 or 3 years. Needless to say, it wasn't very cost effective. We were cutting lawns and shoveling snow at about $25 per driveway, and depending on the size of the lawn, $25 to $50 a lawn, and we would be driving all over Ottawa to do that. So we recognized that we really needed to develop a commercial business and not rely on residential snow removal and groundskeeping to make this work. So we approached the largest social housing provider in Ottawa, which is the second largest social housing provider in the province, Ottawa Community Housing, and spoke to them about taking on some of their properties. Now, they have a very active community development department, so they certainly early on appreciated the potential value in working with our organization. So we talked a lot about the win-win situation for us. So, David was referring to what's the social benefits, what are the social returns, and clearly our pitch to them was, look, a lot of the folks that live in your housing come to our programs, they're unemployed, they're looking for jobs. If you create a partnership with us, then we can help those individuals become employed. So we were moved on to the procurement department to discuss that with them. And one of the things that I think many social enterprises discover is that there's a certain level of reluctance initially to take on a social enterprise. There's, we talk about stigma related to mental illness. Well, there is a stigma related to social enterprise. Aside from the fact that everybody doesn't understand exactly what social value is in contracting out, there's also a concern that, well, maybe a social enterprise can't do the same quality of work that a private sector provider could. So they were a bit reluctant, but agreed to take this on a pilot project basis. So we started in 2012, and as time progressed and their level of confidence grew, they would throw a few more contracts our way. So it began to grow from $56,000 in our first year, and by the third year, the pilot, we were up to about $100,000 worth of contracts. We went from basically grass cutting in the summer to a fall cleanup and a spring cleanup. Every time they had a small contract that they wanted to add, they would offer it to us initially. So clearly we were building that confidence going forward. What we then did was approach them and talk to them about, being in a position to take on more of their properties and bid on some of their contracts. There was still some reluctance, and they were already engaged in contracts with other providers, so we had to wait until those contracts had expired and they were going to go to tender again. So during that interim position, we talked a lot about how we could develop a social procurement policy, not just for our business, but for any procurements that they wanted to pursue going forward. Clearly, from an impact perspective, this particular pilot project employed about 12 people to 15 people every summer, and a completely different group of people during the winter. So the people that cut grass didn't necessarily want to shovel snow, and vice versa. So in total, we were probably employing about 24 people on a part-time basis seasonally through this particular business. And in terms of revenues, you can see from the point at which we first initiated in 2007, you could see the increase in our revenues going forward. Where the spike is 2016. That's when we bid on the contract with Ottawa Community Housing, and that's the difference that social procurement makes in terms of revenue. So you can see that big spike from 2016 to 2017. And this is just a sort of fun slide that the operational manager developed from good-natured groundskeeping. So number of clients that are employed on a regular basis, and that's for the groundskeeping piece, so the summer work. The number of properties that we're maintaining, the number of homeowners, tenants, and property owners that we actually serve. Ottawa Community Housing has 33,000 tenants, so at 8,000 tenants, we still have a ways to go. And then these are sort of fun little statistics about the amount of trimmer line used and the hour of labor that our folks managed to work, the revenues, and the pounds of leaves we took to the city dump through the course of that period of time. So as we worked through the social procurement policy with Ottawa Community Housing, they came up with this kind of rating scale. So they provided 15 points for experience. And in this particular contract, because we had experience providing services through the pilot, we ranked quite highly in that area. Service capacity or capability, we had proven that we could provide the service. One of the conditions would be that we would have to purchase new equipment, and we did. We had to spend $140,000 worth of purchasing dollars in a new truck and some new equipment to expand the business, and we knew that going in. So, you know, one of the pieces when you're bidding on larger contracts is making sure you have the capability to purchase the equipment that may be needed to fulfill your contract. Methodology was the method in which we were going to perform the contract, and that was indicated based on the work that we had done for them previously. And now you'll notice value added for social enterprise. So they added 30 points for being a social enterprise, which was equal to the value of the pricing. So clearly, in this particular case, Ottawa Community Housing provided an equal weighting for lowest price and for being a social enterprise. So that was a pretty significant commitment to social procurement policies. So here we see some of the advice that the procurement agents at Ottawa Community Housing had suggested. So, and again, this is from a purchaser's perspective. So they had talked about the importance of starting small and growing the contract by working together in partnership. So they brought us along at a pace that we could cope with, not expecting us to make quantum leaps. They also talked about helping to create conditions for long-term success. So they were very supportive. If there were any issues in terms of quality of our work, we would get together with them and discuss it. We would iron it out, and we would go forward. So we weren't just, sort of reprimanded, or they didn't automatically look towards dropping our contract because of poor performance. We worked through those, particularly in the first couple of years when we were getting our feet wet. And also making sure that the social enterprise component really meets everybody's needs. So as a purchaser, it's important that whoever's making the procurement is buying a high-quality product. And they emphasize the fact that this is not a charitable service that they're providing. This is a procurement piece. And that's something that we've always pursued very, very aggressively with our own businesses. We've always made sure that we buried the fact that we were a charity. We buried the fact that we were a social enterprise in our formative years, because we wanted people to purchase our products because they were the best quality and fairly priced, not because we happen to employ people with disabilities. And over the course of time, we proved that the quality of our service was sufficient, and then we were in a position to be a little bit bolder about exactly who we were and what we were trying to do. And they also talked about the importance of the senior managers in this case, and it would be certainly any senior executives in any industry, being on board with the idea of social procurement, and that it's important to have an equal value for the social value of the contract as well as the price of the contract. So that's basically the story. We are looking forward to continually being able to bid on expanded contracts as more portions of this come available. So we see this as increasing significantly over the next number of years, and we look forward to being able to hire more people for this particular business, and trying to replicate what we've done with Good Natured Groundskeeping with our other three social enterprises, despite the fact that they work in slightly different industries and we would have to take a slightly different approach. So that's the end of my piece. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Don, and to David and Steph for your presentations. I think that They're going to be very well received from our audience today. I see that we have one question certainly on the chat. But before we get to that, and I encourage others to include any questions that they have for the presenters today, if you type them into either the Q&A box at the bottom in the middle of your screen or in the chat, we will put those back to the presenters. But before we get to the questions, I just wanted to give Stephanie an opportunity to describe a little bit more about the coupons that she mentioned, and as well to provide you all with a coupon code if you're interested in using that. So with that, Steph, I'll turn it over to you, and then we can take up questions.
Thanks, Krista. So like I mentioned earlier, there are some coupon codes made available through the S4ES project and MHCC's support. So I'm going to put a link in the chat box directly to the store on the Social Enterprise Institute, and also the coupon code, which is Thanks MHCC, which you can enter in your cart when you go to check out any course. We have many of those available, and you can all take advantage of those. But I'd also like to mention that if you'd like to get in direct contact with me, we also have a procurement certificate coming out within the next week or so, and it's actually done by David LePage, which is a great coincidence, and he'll be sort of providing that as well as coaching as well, and that's thanks to MHC as well. So if you're interested in getting more in-depth in the idea of social procurement and getting in touch with David to learn a bit more about how you can do that in your organizations, within government, etc., please give me a shout. I'll put my email in the chat box here.
Thanks, Steph. So I just wanted to draw some attention to the first question we have here that was posed to everyone. So Access Talent, the provincial employment strategy for people with disabilities, has a trailblazing pillar. The Ontario government needs to be encouraged to support social enterprises by purposefully contracting with social enterprises. And the participant just sort of put out the idea of any thoughts on this. So it's not directed to any panelist in particular, but if any of you have any thoughts on this piece, I welcome you to share that now.
Yeah, I actually think we need to complement some of the stuff the Ontario government has done. I think what Don has done, and the Center for Social Enterprise Development in Ottawa, the Social Purchasing Project in Toronto, Atkinson Foundation, City of Toronto, and the small business sector, the social enterprise sector within government, actually has been working on social procurement issues. And as Don has indicated, it takes it's a incremental process, and it's a culture shift within government, because you've got a group of people who are used to buying things and only being directed by budget, and then other ministries responsible for things like employment for people with mental health issues. And they don't normally cross. I mean, one is seen as a health, a community issue, the other one's seen as an economic. So it's really a culture shift for government. And so any encouragement that you can do with your local municipality or with the small business social enterprise sector in government is really helpful, because when they see the stories like what Don shares and what comes out of like the social enterprise Toronto group of social enterprises, they start to understand like, oh, this is really solving some really critical social issues with the purchasing. So it's a learning process, but as we start to get these experiences, if you can share them with your government people and encourage them, that's part of our whole advocacy and lobbying effort around this.
Great, thank you for that, David. The next question that we have here is, what sort of policy developments do you see as being needed to push the notion of social impact forward throughout the country? I'll repeat the question just again for the speakers. What sort of policy developments do you see as being needed to push the notion of social impact forward throughout the country? I've directed to any of you to take it.
Well, this is Don. I think just to sort of reiterate what David said, I think certainly from the perspective of social procurement, we need champions. And I think that whether it's the provincial governments or whether it's the federal governments, we really need them to take the lead, set an example for others. We're working fairly closely with the City of Ottawa trying to get their social procurement policies on board. But when you get to the private sector, social enterprise, social procurement is not understood at all. People's eyes just glaze over. So there's a real educational component. And, for those of us actually working as social enterprise practitioners, we spend a lot of time trying to educate chambers of commerce, individual purchasing agents as to what social procurement is. But the more we can get government to look at social impact in everything they do, including social procurement, the easier it's going to be to educate the rest of the community and the other sectors that would be involved.
That's great. Could I add to that as well? Oh, go ahead, David.
Yeah, I was going to suggest, Stephanie, you talk about the Nova Scotia strategy because it's an ecosystem approach.
Absolutely, and that was what I was going to mention. So the Nova Scotia Advancing Social Enterprise Framework was released by the Nova Scotia provincial government in the fall of 2016, and they committed to supporting 6 pillars of development and assistance for social enterprise, and procurement was one of them. And that was a movement that was pushed for by actors in the sector, not only help groups like ourselves, Common Good Solutions, but from the social enterprises themselves, just like Dawn mentioned, and with a lot of support from the government in Scotland as well, who are leaders in this sector. But they have committed to supporting procurement within the government, and the government of Nova Scotia has just released 2 videos educating their staff on how they can make social purchases currently within the existing policies in government. So there are steps being made on a larger scale in provincial governments, and if I'll put a link in the chat for the Social Enterprise Framework so you can share it back at home with your groups.
That's great. Thank you, Stephanie. The next question we have is, how can we at K-Link become a better partner to those leading agencies highlighting and promoting social enterprises? I'll repeat the question.
Yeah, no, I think that anybody who's participating, I think there's a couple of things. One is, I think it's really important to look at our own supply chains and what we buy. And I know that we often think, well, we're a nonprofit or we're a small organization. But when you think, regardless of the size of the organization, you think of some of the nonprofits are huge businesses. They're buying, millions of dollars worth of products and services. And I think the first thing is to look internally at, where are we purchasing and where can we make changes? Almost everybody uses meeting space and catering. So when you think about something like, next time we need lunch, are we just going to run downstairs or down the block, or are we going to think consciously about, is there a social enterprise that does catering that we can order from? Is there, like in Vancouver, lots of nonprofits use the cleaning solution to do their office cleaning. The cleaning solution is a janitorial service that employs people with mental health issues. So their mix is about 70% of their employees are people dealing with mental health issues. So they've created a supportive work environment that shifts the where equipment is stored or how equipment is stored, the types of shifts that people can do, the types of work. So they've changed the business model not only to accommodate the needs of the customer, so we get our office cleaned by a cleaning solution. We know they're going to do a great job. They tell us when they're going to be there, but we also agree that, yes, they can leave a bit of equipment there because their employees may not have a car. So it's really, first of all, looking at our supply chain, and then it's starting to make the shift ourselves. And when we start to do that, the examples start to grow, and then we start to influence other stakeholders. So I think there's we like to think about these big policy shifts, but I think one of the first shifts is our own culture on how we look at spending.
Great example, David. Thank you. The next question is, how engaged are the other provinces? Well, we heard from Stephanie about the province of Nova Scotia, so that's great. And perhaps we can move if there's any other highlights from other provinces that you want to outline. But how engaged are other provinces in Canada with regard to social procurement? Are there opportunities to bring these groups together for bigger impacts? Maybe we can focus on the second piece of the question, since we already heard about one of the great things that's happening in one of the provinces.
So I think every province has some activity going on. British Columbia has social impact guidelines that have just now, interestingly, moved from the innovation social ministry, have moved over to the procurement ministry to implement. That's a big shift. Alberta's talking about it. Manitoba and Manitoba Housing, great examples. If you look at Build, and very similar to what Don's working on, a real great relationship between government purchasing, Manitoba Housing, and employment-based, supports for youth at risk. So it's happening, I think, in almost every, Newfoundland, Labrador is doing a social. So it's moving, and I think trying to bring that together is one of the Canadian challenges. It's also happening on the federal level. There's a bill pending right now, Bill 344, that would allow the minister to add a social value onto their infrastructure spending. So I think I look at it as a shifting trend, but I think the person asking the question is really spot on. It's like, how do we bring this together so it becomes not just individual pieces, but how do we start to collectively have a larger impact? And I think that's part of the purpose of the S4ES project, is how do we, take and build skills to be better at it? How do we create the purchasing direct, and how do we create the online marketplace? But it's also like we have to have the causeways and the Crackers Catering actually on the ground saying, this is how you do it, and here's the impacts we're creating. So it's a long-term collective project that's shifting not just policy practice. We're shifting a culture of the value of how we spend money.
Thanks, David. Well, I think the last question that I have here, I think, was pretty well already answered by our speakers in the previous questions. So I know that there was a resource that was shared in the Q&A chat, and so we're hoping that we're going to be able to share that more widely from one of the participants with the full group. And as well, there was a question with regards to the Nova Scotia piece, and the question was, do you have a link to the Nova Scotia videos that you spoke about? So Stephanie, maybe you might be able to take that question.
Yes, if you send me an email, I can see if I can get permission to share them. They're currently circulated internally in the Nova Scotia government. They're really nice, 3-minute videos, sort of introducing the components of social purchasing. I'll see if we can share it. Additionally, I'll put up a link to a social procurement related video I can put up to share as well.
Great, thank you. So with that, I want to direct everyone to the fact that we hope that you enjoyed today's webinar. We really appreciate the time of our speakers. Thank you so much, Stephanie, David, and Dawn. Please note, everyone, that you will receive an email in the next few hours, and it's going to contain a satisfaction survey. We ask that you just take a few minutes to complete this for us, as any of your feedback always helps us to improve on these webinars and move forward with making changes to make them better for the audience in the future. As well, I want to just show everyone's contact information from today's webinar on the slide. These are all available, these slides, for downloading as well. So if you want to reach out to anyone in particular or individually, that's fine. In addition, we do have some resources that have been added to the webinar platform, including the Aspiring Workforce Report that I spoke of at the outset of the webinar, and the Strengthening the Case for Investing in Canada's Mental Health System. Those resources are available both in English and French for download. And again, we encourage you to reach out to any of us if you have any questions about today's talk. So thank you all again, and thanks for your time. And we'll have this up on our website, the live recording, in the next number of weeks. Take care. Bye-bye.